Okay, for people joining this live stream, this is a bit more of an infrastructural discussion than we often have. It is about publishing directories of files in the cloud. And so we have a candidate function, cloud publish directory. We've got some background noise, by the way, here. Okay, so let's start in on with the issues here. All right. So the basic story is that we've got a directory in the local file system, and we want to publish that as a directory in the cloud, right?
Yes. And furthermore, we might want to do so repeatedly as we update contents.
Right. But when we say we're publishing to a directory in the cloud, let's look at what those URLs end up being. So this is the case where basically that URL, let's just see how that works. Hold on, let me see. So we just want the production. Oops, what on earth happened there to the production cloud?
Whoa.
Is that a routing problem from my machine? Okay, that's a super bad start.
It works for me, so it's not generally down. But Matt, can you follow up?
Yeah, I'm looking into it.
Yeah, I seem to be able to get into the cloud from here in St. Louis, so.
And on a different browser, so can I.
Oh.
However, this thing lost my login again from, you know what? Well, okay, so let me try. Oh, now it worked. So that was a stray 500 error. Okay, in any case, so the URLs that we're dealing with here, so like if I go to my files and I go to published, and this is a separate issue, is how we're dealing with the top level directory here versus the subdirectories. But let's go to published, and let's go to whatever the heck this thing is. But let's I don't know what this is. But anyway, you see the URL here, right? It says /published/directory /file, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're imagining is that Cloud Published Directory would be writing a directory name followed by file names under here, correct?
Right. Well, so there are two. I mean, there's the one argument case and the two argument case, and the one argument case refers to pushing to a subdirectory in quote the default publishing location, which I imagine would be the published directory.
Okay, fine.
Whereas a two argument version could put it really anywhere.
Right. Now, but this idea of deploying, I mean, there's no reason why Cloud Deploy shouldn't also have this directory moving capability, right? This has nothing to do with the permissions for publish. This has to do with the idea of turning essentially a file system on on the desktop. Okay, so there are multiple concepts here. Turn a file system on the desktop into a hierarchy of URLs in the cloud. Right, that's one thing.
Uh-huh.
Another thing would be even take this file system, perhaps in the cloud, and publish it. Okay, and copy it to publish it. Am I making sense?
Which presumably Cloud Publish already does for an individual file in the cloud.
That's right. Okay, so that means, so these are two different things, right?
I think so.
I mean, they're so closely related, but okay. So this one could have a cloud deploy version. Jan, are you here? Can you comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, the thing to keep in mind is that right now, both Cloud Deploy and Cloud Publish, I think, have no opinion on your local file system, right? They take an expression, like a notebook expression, and publish that. They're not really.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Or any expression. I mean, if given a string, they publish a string.
Yeah. Okay. So then there's a separate issue.
Or deploy the string, I should say. Sorry.
Right. The separate issue is take a file and deploy/publish it. Right? You're saying that we don't even have that concept, right?
Yeah, not in the form of Cloud Deploy or Cloud Publish. The way you would do it right now is using copy file.
I see, which is kind of ugly. I mean, okay, so right now we'd say copy file, and then you'd copy it. How does it even work?
Cloud object. So the first argument is a plain string, which refers to your local file system, and the second argument would be a cloud object.
Okay, which is what, a directory, or that's an actual final destination cloud object?
That's the final destination, exactly. So it's, the usual rules for cloud objects apply. So if you give a string inside there, it's relative to your current cloud directory, which starts as your user directory, and so on.
Okay.
Also give an anonymous cloud object.
Okay, so we actually need another piece of functionality, which is, I mean, really, what you're telling me is that we need a cloud deploy file. Which would take, could take a notebook object or a file name and deploy it. So the way that would work is it would look like cloud deploy file, and then it would be a file name, and that would deploy to an anonymous cloud object. You get the idea.
Yep.
Now just use the file wrapper for cloud deploy itself. So what does this function do that cloud deploy of file of path wouldn't do?
Well, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. Unfortunately, we don't have a wrapper. Well, I mean, we can know whether that path is a directory.
I don't see the file wrapper documented in Cloud Deploy.
It's not. We're just inventing it.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sure.
I mean, what's interesting about that is it would allow things like cloud deploy of local object. Does that work right now?
Well, copy file of local object works right now.
Okay, but this could be made to work. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay. I kind of like this idea of making it be, so then, because then we don't have to replicate this. We just say cloud publish a file of whatever it is. And then we don't even need a separate cloud publish directory, do we?
That's the question still, right? John, I think you said that there were still enough different options that.
Well, so I mean, these two options that I've outlined, not cloud specific, which I've called clean publish. I know you don't like that name, and file types. These are not things that we would want users to be compelled to write on their own. And they're useful functionality, I think.
Okay, fine. But let's look at. I mean, yeah. So we also have this notion of cloud synchronize, right? Where did we get to with that?
Depends also on what we mean by that. So there's, many people probably think of a two-way synchronization between your local file system and the cloud file system. Yes. And we didn't really think about that.
Okay, what were we calling the one that was the one-way synchronization?
We don't really have a name for that yet. I mean, it could either be just copy file and copy directory, doing stuff more intelligently, or maybe with additional options.
Okay,
but we come up with a
okay. So this is the two-way version. So then the question is the one-way version. Synchronize cloud files with local. From local, right?
Or even the other direction, but only in one direction. You wouldn't try to, merge notebooks, determining what's the newer version or something like that. You would always override one location.
What you're saying is it's some kind of cloud update, but it isn't really that either, because it could be okay. So you're saying this could be. Wow, that's pretty funky. It could be local from cloud. Okay, so it would be something like. Okay, so it's something like update a directory in the cloud from a directory on the desktop, or vice versa. Now, in practice, what you really want, I think, is to register the correspondence and then poke at it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Maybe.
Right, because I mean, basically, I'm very unlikely to want to change that. I mean, I might at some point want to say, okay, let me back it up by synchronizing to something else, right? But most of the time, it's like this cloud, mostly want. I would think what I would want to pick a base directory, then sync everything relative to that. Am I making sense? Didn't we discuss this already? Don't we have notes from what we discussed already? We discussed this 2 weeks ago, didn't we? Matt, can you comment on that, please?
Oh, look, but I don't think there's anything.
Well, you would have been taking the notes. I didn't make the notes. Were you not taking notes then?
Andrea typically takes notes in that meeting. I'll deal with.
Where is Andrea? Is Andrea not here?
No, she's not here.
Can you get her, please? If that
But you wouldn't want a single base directory, right? You want to be able to, let's say, publish multiple packages, each from their own directory.
No. What I'm saying is, what I'd like to do, like my file system is pretty well organized on the desktop. Okay. What I'd love to be able to do is to have the exact same file organization in the cloud.
Yep.
And I don't want to have to rethink, oh, I'm going to have 6 new base directories. I've got the same base directory, I mean, I could pull out my, what's a good example here? My SW notes directory. Okay. So I could perfectly well say, I just want a copy of this, these would be reasonable bases. I want a copy of that in the cloud. See what I'm saying? I don't want to be messing around describing each individual thing. I just want to say everything under that. I want to.
That's certainly one use case. I think that we shouldn't only support that use case.
What's another use case?
You should still be able to not publish everything in the directory, basically, or pick arbitrary relations. So I have package A in one location, package B in another location, but I don't want to publish everything around them.
That's fine. I see. So one thing, okay, then sync everything relative to that. So another case is, or might want to sync particular directories, but the question is whether those directories have their paths be the same, or whether those paths are changed. Did you get what I'm saying? Your package A might have a path that's 5 levels deep in your desktop file system. Do you want to replicate that path, or do you want to put it somewhere different? You might want both things, I think. Right. Okay. By the way, one second. Why is this still not done? Sorry, I'm sorry. Just 1 second here. Carl on a live stream says he can't participate in the stream, but he'd like to beg for cloud blog publish. He really wants blog specific functionality. Yeah. We're working on some related things. We're definitely working on that for computational essays and so on. Different topic.
Not 100% different though.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's go back here. This question about, so we've got this idea of deploying from a file to so by the way, somebody who isn't on mute is making all kinds of background noise. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so first possibility is this kind of thing here. Cloud deploy of a file path. And honestly, this seems pretty uncontroversial. The only issue is what to do with these other options. So let's look at what those other options are. That has to do with what to do with the target. So Cloud Publish already has this issue about whether
Well, it's not quite the same. I mean, question number one is, do you overwrite what's there?
Yes.
So copy file has, I think it's called overwrite target as an option.
Okay, let's take a look at that. Copy file.
Yeah, overwrite target.
Okay, so let's.
But that's a very simple question, which is, there's something already there. You want to overwrite it.
Okay, so that's an option that we should have for both Cloud Publish and Cloud Deploy, in my view.
I think that would make sense. Yeah. I mean, right now the behavior is to just override, so the default would be true.
Yeah,
but
I do think having the default set to true is probably what we want.
I think so. Definitely think so.
But then this, what I call clean publish, though, deals with a somewhat separate question.
Right, which is more related to synchronization.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at the other ones here before we address that one, because that one I think is deeply involved with synchronization. So file types, that's a filter for what to publish.
Exactly. And there's another filter which isn't within this documentation, which isn't part of file types, and that's the narrative paragraph there right before the options list. The cloud published will not publish subdirectories which begin with a period. So that's another kind of a filter too.
Yeah. Okay. So there's some filtering in directories. Okay. So let's take a look. And so there's a couple of possibilities: dot files, and there's some file extensions. Okay. Okay. So then what we want to do here is let's take a look at file system map. Okay, because it has some of these issues. I mean, whatever it does, right. So file system map, I don't think it has exclusions like that. Oh, file name forms, right? All of these are actually interesting. Okay, so this one here, right? Does it make sense to people? File name forms would be, and we could have various string versions of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly how. And max items doesn't seem totally stupid either. Question mark. Not certain about that one. Okay.
File name forms really isn't very well documented, and it doesn't indicate in the documentation that it takes a list, for example, which I sure hope it does.
Well, we should check that it does. My God, file system map was already from 2016. Time flies. Okay. Actually, an interesting suggestion from Ethan on our live stream about copy file, suggesting that copy file uses the success mechanism. I like that idea. What does copy file return now? Oh, it returns the name of the file it copied. Does it?
Yeah, and I think if you use a cloud object, you get back a cloud object.
As opposed to returning a success object. Interesting. Well, at the very least, we should have some kind of progress dialog. Is that feasible for copy file?
As an option? Or?
No, it's something that just always happens if it's big.
Yeah, I don't think you want it to always happen.
Well, it obviously doesn't happen if in the first 5 seconds it doesn't happen.
Right, but if it's inside production code, where does that it
doesn't go anywhere.
Where does it go?
It doesn't go anywhere. I mean, this is when it's a top level thing, when it would be writing the output to a notebook anyway. It does seem like a sensible suggestion to me in the case where, look, you have an input line, it says copy file. It's like, it would be very nice to see what's happening, particularly if it's big, right?
If it ever came out of a system function, what would you think about that?
Horrible. No, I mean, this is really a creature of the top level. I mean, I don't know whether we are currently suppressing monitoring. I mean, this is a project, this is a larger project to talk about monitoring. And I think we need a notion, just like, when you get an image and you put it in a list, it's a different size. So similarly with monitoring, there's monitoring that you want to have happen at top level, and you don't want it if it's a sub operation. You only want it
so like a related thing is, when we're loading some neural net, but we're using a function which isn't obviously a neural net function.
I think that's another, it's actually, this is part of Sushma's project. Maybe Sushma has now handed it off to somebody else to, to deal with these progress dialogues. We should, is Matt the one who's PMing here?
Yes.
Okay, so can you communicate that to Sushma that we should talk about this in connection with that
Yes.
copy file and those things, and also this notion of sub, whether you report on progress if it's a sub operation. Okay,
Yes.
so the question here is, should Cloud Deploy have a file name forms option? Should even file have a file name forms option? In other words, if file represents a directory, because we don't have a wrapper called directory, unfortunately. You get what I'm saying? I mean, one way we could do it is we could say Cloud Deploy of file of path, comma, file name forms, arrow, blah, blah, blah. And that could represent the deployment with those file name forms. I kind of prefer to have it inside the Cloud Deploy, I think. What do other people think?
Yeah, I find it inside the file, it seems really
weird.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think this is unreasonable. And I mean, I think this could, so what would it do if you tried to deploy? This is only relevant if you're deploying files, right? And I don't know whether Cloud Deploy has any other sort of type-specific options here. What the heck is meta information doing?
It's basically arbitrary key value pairs that you can associate with a cloud object.
It can be applied to any cloud object.
Do people do it?
Yeah.
How do you get the meta information back again?
Options. Options object, comma, meta information.
Okay, so this file name forms thing is a little bit of a different animal here. Okay, well, but I just don't think it's worth us having a Cloud Deploy directory. It's not just directory. I mean, it'll be, what happens if the local object is a directory, for instance? What happens if it's a cloud object as a directory? Do we know that? Okay, so given that you have a cloud object, can a cloud object be a directory?
Yep.
Okay.
I was not aware of that. That's news to me. So.
Okay. Okay, so then this would return, if this was a directory, this returns a directory cloud object, correct?
Sorry, can I just ask one clarifying question? Do all directories have corresponding cloud objects? Or do you have to do something to synthesize a cloud object?
Well, it depends on how you create the directory. Same with, cloud objects versus raw files.
No, but we're talking about the things in the cloud object store. Is it the case that every directory in the cloud object store has a cloud object?
Yeah, that should be the case.
So like there's a cloud object for the published directory?
Yep.
Okay.
I didn't know that either. But that's interesting. Okay, so then that's the return form in the case where Okay, so in other words, a typical cloud, I might do the following. I might say cloud publish of file of pics.jpg, and then that's a fine thing which would wind up as a cloud object that has blah 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 .jpg. Correct?
Yep. Yep. Assuming we keep the name, basically, which we should. Right now, if you do a cloud publish of a single argument, it will create an unnamed cloud object.
But of course, that's because by default, everything is an expression which does not fundamentally have a name.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing, preserving the name of the file. I think we should preserve the name of the file, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and if you don't want it preserved, so what happens if that collides with a file you already have? That's a target overwrite target. I would argue that in this case, there's a scary case here where the name happened to, isn't there an overwrite target of automatic to deal with the scary case where there happened to be a file name? Well, do we know this? I mean, if you deployed from that file before, hunky dory, but if you deployed your prize expression to that name, then you happen to have a file that has the same name as the thing you deployed to. You deploy that. That's a bit unfortunate.
Well, I mean, it's, there are two bad options here. One bad option is that you overwrote your thing just by, not paying attention to the file name. The other bad option is that you can evaluate your thing once and then it won't evaluate properly again until you add overwrite target true to it.
Well, I think one thing for the design, though, is that cloud publish typically is described as making a copy, right? So if, hopefully your source of truth for your prized expression isn't in your published directory.
Oh, that's true. Cloud publish is okay in that regard. Cloud deploy, it's less obvious. Okay. Hey, there's an interesting comment from Ethan on the live stream. First of all, he's complaining that delete file returns null, which I agree is pretty stupid. I mean, I don't see why that shouldn't return success. Would it break things to do that, do you think?
I mean, it seems reasonable from my perspective, but I'm not sure if we have the right people to comment if there are any unexpected issues.
Okay, let's bring that up in the LCC meeting. Could we move it there, please?
Sure.
Okay, he also comments on the dry run option, which apparently AWS and rsync have. That is an interesting idea.
I wonder if rather than having it be an option, it would be a wrapper.
I think it should be a wrapper. Let's look at that for a second. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah. It's related a little bit to sandboxing too.
What would the wrapper look like? I mean, would it be a don't evaluate? I think this is a bit scary, but I mean, that's possible. Something like this. Would that be possible?
I don't see why not.
And then it would return success or failure.
And gosh, it might have the option for, returning the operations, returning or printing. I'm not sure which would be the best. The operations that, that were called, because of course, this might be buried deep inside a function.
Well, you can do an echo if you want that, then. If you want to see it and it's buried, echo it.
Well, I mean,
I think you'd want is you'd cloud publish a directory and you want to see what files specifically are copied.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point of the dry run is you want to see what it would do, what things it touches.
Yeah. I wish there was something less metaphorical than dry run. What would be something a little bit more
It's kind of like using block to virtualize your file system or something. That's not quite the right analogy, but
it's basically saying do this, but without actually executing any side effects, at least side effects on the file system or cloud system.
Yeah, do this without doing it. In other words, don't do it.
But report the side effects.
Yeah, right. What would this do is really the what it's but how do we say that? I mean, what's an analogous thing where we don't do it, I mean, this is a general thing of something which would have side effects.
So this is something I've never been clear on, because we've had some sandbox functionality, but I guess, is it true that none of the sandbox stuff has made it to the system contexts?
I believe that's correct. I mean, we certainly sandbox plenty of things in the cloud and so on.
Right, because I mean, it's a bit like that. Imagine if you had a sandbox that you could wrap around things in the system context, and then it would throw the sandbox exceptions of things that tried to escape the sandbox.
Yeah, but the point is, though, that I mean, this is a everything is escaping, right? I mean, we might want a general.
I'm not saying the two concepts are the same, but they're similar.
Yeah, I do like this concept. I mean, constrained evaluate is the thing we plan for the sandbox, but this is a different thing where. How complicated is this code-wise to do dry run versions of things like copy file?
I don't think anyone in this meeting can answer that.
Okay. All right, let's come back.
But I should think that, in the kernel, at least, I mean, obviously something like a library link or whatever could escape it, but I should think that in the kernel that we've already basically bracketed all the file operations with sandbox code. So I would think we would be able to implement something, that hooks into the sandbox code for this. What it can't do, of course, is it can't just throw an exception and fail, and have to continue on. That's the one main difference.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is not going to do anything. This is going to be, I mean,
I mean, in that sense, it's the same as a sandbox. The sandbox doesn't actually do it, but what the sandbox does do is throw an exception. Way too dangerous.
Right, I understand. I mean, it's more like report effects of delete file, but even that's not quite right. I mean, it's like, would this work? We need a better name for it, but I think the concept is good. And if we don't cover it here, we should cover it in the LCC meeting.
Yeah,
okay, Matt?
I think that's the right place.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, let's come back to this question, your clean publish versus the synchronization question. Okay. So we've got this notion of cloud deploy and cloud publish, and we've got it for a directory. And I think this all seems quite implementable, right? All this.
Right, but I would want file name forms or something like it with these symbolic categories that I defined. I think that's really useful.
Fine. I think we need to look at file name forms. Which means I'm not sure who implemented. Who implemented? Was that Nick or Fahim or somebody who implemented the file name map, file system map? I can't remember who implemented that. That's part of the ILD team. We need to find those people and make sure they're in a meeting to talk about what happens with the file name forms thing, because actually it's incompatible right now. What it says, file name forms claims it's taking a string pattern, right? And this wouldn't be a string pattern.
In fact, it's not a string pattern. It is a file name pattern, which is different. At least I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here.
Okay.
All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe it is a string pattern. I don't know. But I wouldn't be. That's a distinction which I suspect allows forms of the same type as in file names. So yeah.
Okay, but I would claim whatever is necessary here is useful for file names as well.
Sure.
Okay, so this is a separate discussion we need to have about this. Okay, and this stuff can be implemented without this. I mean, we can put in whatever we want for file name forms. We don't have these symbolic forms for file name forms. Seems useful, but it's also part of file names itself, right? Something for LCC.
Yeah.
Matt, you got that?
Yes.
Okay.
And do we keep the dot file specialty orthogonal to this, or maybe somehow?
No, I think this should be part of this. I think we should just default to not do. I mean, file name forms are automatic. Would default to not keep dot files.
How would you specify that?
To not keep a dot file?
But to use everything else.
I don't know, probably with an except. This is a bit of
work in file names. I'm not sure it does.
I don't think it does. So this is a bit of a mess. We need to unscramble this. Okay, but let's keep going on the question of synchronization. Okay.
Okay.
So, by the way, don't forget the overwrite target option, right, Joel? That's probably for you, right?
Yep.
And we should generate a failure object if one of these things fails. I assume we do that already. Right?
It doesn't right now, no.
What does it do right now?
It issues a message and returns $failed.
Okay, but we should return a failure object.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so let's come back to this question about okay.
And so to be clear, the extra sauce here is that in the cloud, we would have the option to just outright delete files that don't exist locally.
Yeah, I understand that. I want to point out another thing. This should work. That should obviously work, right?
What would it do? Just to be clear, I mean, wouldn't
it's going to publish it. It's going to be putting it in the published directory.
Okay, right.
It's going to copy that and publish it.
What if it's already there?
Then it's going to give an error, probably.
Mm-hmm. There's also the interesting case of an unnamed object. If you do cloud publish of an anonymous cloud object, there's no name we can.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know. But now notice here that when you do that, the top level directory, so it would actually go to published.
Publish slash,
so that's the first element of the dir.
The file name take of -1 of that path. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Which I think I may have actually said in the Cloud Publish Directory documentation.
Okay. All right. Let's go back here. We need to talk about the UX. Let me just understand that, and then I want to come back to this. In the desktop, we're going to have presumably quack. So publish to cloud is for a specific notebook in focus, right?
For now, yeah.
Well, I wonder whether that dialogue, by the way, I wish it didn't go white like that. Okay. So I wonder whether that dialogue could have, or whether it gets too complicated at the top, could say basically, what do you want to publish? and that the default is to publish this notebook. So it says it's publishing this notebook. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then you could pick another notebook. That's probably the cleanest way to do it. It's a little funky that it would come up, whatever notebook is in focus, it would come up asking to publish that notebook. But I guess it's the same thing as saying,
well,
okay,
it's either that or we add another menu item. I don't think there are any other reasonable choices.
No, I agree. But what do you think about this one where we make it so that I think it's nice to show what you're going to publish, just in case you got that you were confused about what was in focus or something like that.
Yeah, well, in an ideal world, that dialogue would be attached to the notebook in some way, so that you could tell by virtue of its attachments. But yeah, I think this is. I think that's probably okay.
All right, so we'll need a design for that. I hope that won't make the dialogue too complicated.
Well, I always push back against complexity, so.
Well, I mean, maybe another menu item is better. What would it say?
But no, what I'm saying is, before that UX reaches you, if it's fraught with complexity, I'm going to push back on it. So.
Okay, but so save to cloud would have the same.
No.
Well, that's the equivalent of cloud deploy.
Well,
what the heck is that doing? This is hopefully getting changed, right? This horrifying dialogue.
It's being worked on, but it's a large amount of work. So, but it is being worked on, yes.
Okay, but then wouldn't this have the same behavior that it says what you're saving? I mean, it's a little weird because it already is telling you what you're saving here. And whatever the pull down is that says what you're saving has to also
it's not telling you what you're saving. It's telling you the name.
I know
that you're saving it to. It's not telling you what you're saving.
I know. So okay, backing up here. Okay. So synchronization. So what we're saying is, when you do this, and that would be relevant for cloud deploy as well as cloud publish. There's nothing special about publish, right? Same issue.
I suppose, yeah. I admit to not having thought as much about the cloud deploy side of things, but
okay. But so the other way around of take the cloud and check it out into my local file system. That's a different function again, right?
Yeah. Well, even if you look at something like rsync, rsync has a direction to it. There's a sender and a receiver, and the behaviors will be different depending on which side is a sender and which side is a receiver.
Okay, but how do we? I mean, in our case, I see what you're saying. So what we could do is we could say cloud synchronize, and then we give either a local file name well, okay, so then let's imagine we did this. That's doing this operation of a clean, because this thing about clean publish is only relevant second time around. It's not relevant first time around because there's nothing there first time around.
Right.
I think in modern world times we could get away with cloud sync. I think that's a word.
It is, but but I might prefer SYNC.
Yeah, that would be better. Okay.
But yes, both forms are legal Scrabble words. In case you wanted to know.
Good. Okay. Okay, so then, okay, so this case,
yeah. So if you're looking at the the rsync model, like I said, there's a direction, and you could and basically what you're doing is you're pushing stuff from the sender to the receiver. You have to declare who the sender and who the receiver is.
Right, but so the thing that I'm interested in is the one argument case of this, where it knows by default where I put that. Right, so then effectively what we've got is cloud sync rules, arrow. This puppy corresponds to like they're pairs. That thing corresponds to cloud object of whatever. And that could perfectly well be generated by, I mean, we could perfectly well have a dollar cloud sync rules, but I don't know how we would keep this. I mean, it would have to be some kind of persistent value, but it will be generated when you do a cloud publish or a cloud deploy. Am I making sense?
No. What do you mean it would be generated?
The synchronization, okay. What is synced with what? If you say cloud publish my local file, my local directory to somewhere in the cloud, then the system would remember, oh yes, that local directory is associated with that thing in the cloud. So if I then poke it by saying cloud sync of that local directory, it knows, oh yeah, that one was deployed to the cloud in this place.
Okay, that seems like a very natural operation for a user interface, but a very dangerous operation for a language construct.
Don't disagree. I don't disagree. So I'd be perfectly happy to see that only be in the user interface. And that you have to specify it explicitly, so that then this would not be allowed initially. Okay, so the user interface we're saying here, okay, so then there will be an additional thing here, sync with cloud, right?
Unclear what sync with cloud would do that save to cloud wouldn't in your world.
Because it could go the other way.
No, but that's sync is a misnomer. That's not actually what sync does.
But it's the other way around. That is that it goes from the cloud to your.
Oh, you could cloud. Sync from cloud.
Yes.
Yes. No, you couldn't sync to cloud. You could sync from cloud. From cloud to your.
Well, wait. Why can't you sync to cloud?
Well, I mean, because well, you can, but that's what save already would be doing.
I understand, but conceptually sync, but save might be doing that or might not be doing that, depending on what we do for this clean, what the default is for this.
Would be capable of doing is what I mean. Yeah.
Right. If with that option. So my argument would be that there's a separate function in the system called cloud sync that effectively has that option, right? That would have the option, whatever the name is of that option, about whether it deletes files and so on. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. But that save by default wouldn't be in that business. Okay. It would never be in the business of magically deleting files. It would just, put more files there.
Okay.
And then the sync with cloud would have a sync from cloud, sync to cloud, that both of those are possibilities from it. And that then in the UI, so to speak, and that then I think that makes sense to me. Okay, so the first thing we're going to see here, and by the way, I don't know whether we've had the discussion here, but whether you guys already figured it out. This business about promoting the published directory so it's not in the home directory, did you guys work that out already? Remember the thing we talked about last week? Remember that?
Yeah, I remember, yeah. But there's no final solution yet. I mean, what we're saying is
Did you work on it?
Home directory would move somewhere else. Basically.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to do. Okay. There's an interesting suggestion from Sandra on our live stream. By the way, you've got a lot of background noise. By the way, a lot of background noise. About this, that you could say something like sandboxed of delete file. You know, let's say sandboxed file operations of Expa. Problem with that is, I mean, that would be like, don't actually do the file operations. Although I suppose, see, the problem is what then isn't sandboxed? And then what it would do is come back with a report, report on what happened. What would have happened? Well, that's a thing for the LCC meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, I think we nailed what we needed to nail for this meeting. Do you agree?
So you're suggesting that we then come up with a cloud sync, which has an option that we haven't named yet, but has the behavior that we ascribe to clean publish.
Well, I think what it is, what that one would be is something like something like where did I put my cloud sync thing? It's something like sync file structures, arrow true or false, or something. Or what is it really doing? It's deleting files that weren't there.
Right. So it's taking the overwrite as assumed, but then the question is, does it then actually delete as well?
Okay, but so cloud sync then would have the overwrite target option.
Yes, that's perfectly reasonable.
Okay, so the next one is delete absent files, basically, is what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
Delete missing files, delete absent files.
I think missing is probably more common, more easily understood.
It's a little weird given the delete missing that we have. Delete non-conforming files.
Yeah.
That sounds deeply. There's some kind of bizarre political correctness overtone to that.
Yes.
Dystopian something or other.
It's shades of the Apple 1984 commercial.
Well, I think we could start off with delete missing files, although I don't particularly like that. I don't like it because of the correspondence with delete. Delete absent files, delete. I think being able to say directly the word delete. Delete non-corresponding files. Awfully long. But that is kind of what it is. Anyway,
okay. Well, be that as it may, I guess then my job is to write a Cloud Sync page, which takes all this into account.
I think so. My preference of the ones listed here is delete absent files.
Okay. Matt, can you make sure that this notebook, can you email that to me?
Yes.
And I can use that as a source.
Meanwhile, for Joel and others, it's get the file wrapper to work inside Cloud Deploy and so on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like this design. I think this is all quite good.
And just one question, just to understand. Yes. So Cloud Sync we're fine with it not necessarily being two-way. That it's, make sure that you have the same thing on both ends after executing.
I'm thinking that what we could do in the future is some kind of
I'm not sure what you mean by two-way. I mean, and it's you can't literally synchronize things. I mean, you can't literally do a two-way sync because you have to have a reference. You do a three-way sync. So
cloud in a good way, yeah.
right. So cloud sync is really it's a push or a pull.
Syntactically, we could do it like this, possibly. Although I have to say that then copy files should probably accept that also. Should copy file accept a rule? What's that?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see what you were typing. Okay,
I typed a rule because that way, if we did in the future have two-way sync, we could use a two-way rule there.
When I talk about the impossibility of two-way sync, I mean, unless you back up the system with unless you back up both sides with version control, it's not an implementation problem. It just can't be done. Because the information's gone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
why a three-way sync is what works, because the third component is the thing which was the progenitor of the other two.
I understand, but what I'd want it to do is, versions or not, is to say keep my file system like what Dropbox would do, for example. What is Dropbox? It's a in what sense is that?
Well, Dropbox does. I don't know all the ways in which Dropbox resolves these issues, but Dropbox has the capability to do versioning and to do three-way.
Right, but the basic point is it's syncing to the master copy in the Dropbox cloud.
Yeah,
that's what you're basically saying. Everything is syncing to that.
Yes.
And here there is no master.
Right. That's exactly correct. Now you're designating the master by saying which side is on the left-hand side of the rule.
Yeah, if we do it with rules, but I don't think we should. I think we should do it just with commas.
Okay.
All right. Excellent, guys. Okay. People are following live stream. We're about to do one about quantum mechanics and quantum computing. All right. Talk to you all soon.
Okay, great. Bye.
Thanks.